Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games, back with another cool pinball repair video for you this evening. This is Gottlieb's Solar Ride. We've never had one of these. We bought this off a gentleman a couple weeks ago, and we are running through some pinball machines right now, so we thought, let's go ahead and do that Solar Ride. So this will be an interesting repair video because the thing already works. So there's not much to repair. But with that said, I don't know the best way to put this, but we sell these, right? So although it is completely working right now, it needs some cosmetic stuff done, but we also have to still do some electronic stuff just to make it kind of reliable, because this thing is running on the original stuff, and if we just leave it like it is, it's probably going to stop working here pretty soon. It's hard to predict stuff like that with any kind of certainty, but you have to do a little bit of preventative maintenance. These things are old, very old, so we're gonna have to work through it a little bit. So that is what we will do in this video. So this is the shape that the thing is in as we received it. It's actually in really nice shape. I don't like using words like mint and all that. It's not mint. I could walk around and point out all kinds of stuff that's wrong with it, but it's in very nice shape, in my opinion. If you were looking for a solar ride, this would be a pretty good one to start with. So the cabinet is very nice. Even like the scorecards on the apron are very nice. No, this machine does not have 4 flippers. It has 3 flippers. Joe was cleaning it up, waxing it, changing all the rubbers, all that stuff. So he's got it looking pretty good. He went and did the magic eraser and all that. It's got a little bit of ball swirl there, right? So it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but the thing is cleaning up very nice, very, very nice. So while he's doing a playfield, I'm going to do some of the electronic stuff. The reason that we have a 4th flipper laying here is because these are the original type of flippers on a Gottlieb. This one, someone has swapped at some point, and it's the wrong one. So we're going to put the regular kind on. It wouldn't normally be that big of a deal, but they actually use a different size flipper rubber. So all of the Gottliebs use a thin one like this, and then Bally, Williams, stuff like that, they use a thicker one. They use a thicker rubber on it. So that should be like that. Look at that. Perfect. A little bit of glue and we're good to go. So we got to swap that out. That's one of the things. Let me pop the hood here and let's see what it looks like inside. So here's the inside. Got a little bit of dust and stuff, but all in all, it's in very nice shape, actually. Pretty cool. I do see a couple little... What in the world was that from? A couple black wires went to something and got the end replaced. There is some kind of junction box laying down in there. That's not good. Yeah, somebody's been doing some connector work. You see the little pieces of connectors laying here? So we'll have to see what that was for. I can't tell. So the bottom the bottom board there looks pretty good. Everything looks nice and clean and orderly. Nothing looks hacked. I see a bridge rectifier back there that is laying on the that is just laying on the base. So hopefully that was taken out and replaced and it didn't just fall out. Very clean underneath. Like I said, it's in pretty damn nice shape. Okay, so let's look at the back glass. So here's the back glass. Unfortunately, it's in pretty nice shape with the exception of the blue is starting to flake. See the little white spots where you can see the light popping out, and it's all over everywhere. There's blue. Her green leggings there starting to crack away a little bit too. So this back glass is going to need to be sealed just to save it how it is. We may just leave it because it's got such a ridiculous art on it with a mirrored back glass that at first glance you can't really tell that there's anything wrong with it, even though it's starting to flake. You know, it's everywhere there's blue. Like, you see that? That's a good example there. And so you can see the light through it a little bit. But we've learned in the past that whenever you try to repaint it, it looks pretty blobby. Okay, so let's open it up and look inside. All right, here's the back glass. You can get a better idea of where it's flaking. Damn shame, too, because it was in pretty nice shape, with the exception of that. These Gottliebs had little blue inserts over the windows to make the digits on the green displays look a little more blue. Quick little repair tip for you. Whenever we got this player 2 over here was a little bit light, and it still is. I can tell it a little bit. If I was going to say that player 1, 3, and 4 are at 100%, player 2 is at 85%. It doesn't really show up on the camera as much, but it's a little dim. But whenever we got it, it was at about 50%. So there's tricks you can do to zap it to where it gets as bright as the other ones, and so you can basically run power to like a higher voltage to the 2 outside pins for a few seconds to kind of zap it to get the filament to clean up a little bit and make it brighter. But we found over the years that if you just leave it plugged in all day for a few days, it does the same thing. So here in our shop, yesterday we plugged it in and left it plugged in all day, and then we left it plugged in all day today. So it's probably ended up with 24 hours or so of burn on it, and it's almost as bright as the other ones now. So something to think about if you get one that's dim. So look inside. Again, very nice shape, but it's all original. So, yeah, I hate that term, all original. I shouldn't say that. It's mostly all original, right? So it has the original power supply. And the reason I wouldn't say all original is because maybe that's been worked on 30 years ago. Who knows? But so it's the original power supply that has some of the original capacitors and things on it. It's the original Gottlieb System 1 motherboard, you know. I wonder if yeah, here's something trippy. Now this doesn't really matter, but it just tells you a little bit of a story. Serial number 9887. Serial number 9887. Serial number 9887. So all three of the boards are a matching set. They're probably the original ones. You can see this battery is just starting to corrode over here on the left. That is not the original battery, I don't think. See the hot glue on it? The original one would have been one actually mounted to the board. We'll be messing with that later. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then the driver board. So on a System 1, basically the power supplies are problematic. They will just freaking die on you. So this is the biggest problem that we have to worry about. This power supply is going to die at any minute. But I don't want anybody to talk trash about these power supplies, people. This damn thing was built in like 78 or 79 or something, and it's still working. That's 40 freaking years, and it's still working. So it's not a bad design. It's just, it's old. It needs to be worked on. And the battery thing, too, we'll talk about that later. But the battery has been replaced, but, you know, I couldn't sell this and leave that like that. It's going to cause problems. And then the thing to look for on the driver board is they had this problem where if something shorts on the playfield, or even if one of these transistors shorts, I believe it can do it, but basically if you get a short somewhere, which happens in pinball machines, you know, any pinball machine will get a short somewhere on something eventually. If you get a short, it would accidentally send voltage back through this harness up here to the motherboard and into the switch spider chip, which I believe is this one. And so if it did that, it would fry this spider chip, and you cannot get new versions of these spider chips. See how weird it looks? You can see why they call it a spider chip. So the only way to fix it is to get one off another board, but on all the other boards, this same freaking chip is pretty much what burns up. This one, this one, this one, this one, and this one will not match it. It's a different part. So since you can't get new ones of those, all you can do is get them off old boards. It's kind of hard to find one of these original boards that still works, because this spider chip will either get destroyed by the battery, which is right here next to it, or it'll get destroyed by the driver board because of voltage shorted on somewhere. But at some point, they fixed that problem, and the way they fixed it was they added these little diodes in circuit. So if your board has these 4 little diodes over here, it won't do the thing where it shorts that spider chip. So this one, I guess, was one of the ones that was a little later on, and they had already fixed it. It's something like the first 3 or 4 System 1 games didn't have those diodes, and then they figured it out, and they started putting them in on all the ones after that. So there's also a number there of 58. I don't know what that is. And check this out. That is a pin connector. So somebody has been replacing the pins on the board. So this thing may not need much work, but they didn't. It probably happened whenever they put that new battery on it. So again, we'll talk about that later. So the first thing I'm going to do is, again, it's a fully working game. I'm going to pull this power supply out, and we're going to do a few little upgrades on that sucker. Okay, folks, so here is this little sucker, the power supply. It all comes in here. This connector sends the voltage out to the displays, and it has a pot there to adjust the voltage to 60 volts. It also has a 42 volt line that goes out that runs the smaller display. Whatever. The 4 volt DC, I think, runs the smaller display, and the 8 volt DC runs the bigger displays. So this is all display stuff. And then up here at the top is the power supply for the logic boards. So it needs 5 volts and negative 12 volts. Isn't that interesting? And there's a little pot here to adjust the 5 volts to get it dialed in just right. And then there's a bunch of caps that are now over 40 years old. This one here, this filter cap, is a little undersized, they say. So it's 2900 UF. So you want to get up to like 6800 or something like that, or even as high as 10,000. There's the date code, 1978, the 43rd week of 1978, that capacitor was made. And it still looks brand new, but we all know it's probably not new inside. So I'm going to replace as many of these as I have, and that'll get it a little more reliable. But this one here, you really want to replace. It causes trouble. This game, you know, it's in very nice shape, and it's been sitting for a long time and not used. A gentleman bought it many years ago, and it's been sitting in temperature-controlled storage, you know, like in his storage room or something at his house for a long time. So it hasn't been played much at all. It does still work, but things like these caps, they're not going to, once they start getting some juice running through them for a little while, they're not going to like that, I don't think. So while it is working, I want to get it working a little better. So I'm going to see what kind of cap I've got for that, and then whichever other ones I can replace. This one here is a filter cap for the displays. So you don't necessarily have to replace that one. It sometimes if it goes bad, you'll start getting like a ripple, like a shake in the displays. These little suckers here are mounted on the board on the back, and they're all isolated. So you want to make sure that they are not touching the metal whenever you're done. And then there we have to do the ground mods. So I'm going to go ahead and add the ground wire, which you add right here. You put it on the negative side of this big capacitor. So you want to get a wire coming off of the board about 8 inches or so that you can use to mount to the back box. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the first thing I'm going to do is take all this apart. All right, so we swapped out a bunch of the caps. The only one I had to leave was that filter that display when I was talking about. I don't have that one. It's a 200 UF 150 volt. So I was hoping I had like a 220 160 or something, but I did not. So it's just going to have to stay. Now, I did swap all the other ones. Check out this. You guys are going to be so proud of me, and girls. You men and your ladies and gentlemen are going to be so proud of me. You know how I always never have the proper axial one, so I had to put a radial one in. So I took this big bad boy off of there. This one has to go, right? And I looked around, and lo and behold, I had a 6800 35 volt to replace this 2900 30 volt. Now the 2900, usually you wouldn't want to go way up like that, but over the years, the people that know what they're talking about has said that these are undervalued. So you want them to be 68 to 10,000. So I had a 68, which I must have bought just for this purpose. But look, it's radial instead of axial. So check out what I did. I drilled 2 holes and I mounted the thing vertically in its new holes. Look at that. Isn't that just beautiful? Man, that's a good looking one. And now since I did that, remember the ground has to go here, so I can just put a wire actually in that hole that the original radial thing would have been in. So the reason that they're doing that is because this is the ground trace running down through the middle of the board here. So we're going to get that nice and grounded. I want to talk about these tags too here in a minute. We're going to get into these tags, people. So I think we're pretty good. I'm going to add my ground wire and then we'll put it back. Well, I wanted to show you a couple other things. This is old tech stuff. This is like 1978 or so, 79. I wanted to show you some neat stuff. Okay, so the way this mounts, they have these 2 transistors at the end or whatever they are. Voltage regulators, whatever. And look how they've done the traces. That's factory. There is a little piece of something that they put under the freaking leg so that it wouldn't accidentally short out to the other one. Now look up here. You see that? So the trace is running to there is a trace running to that middle leg, and they have put a little piece of whatever that is under it. They're all like this. I've taken apart probably 20 of these things, and they're always like that. So crazy. So I'm actually gonna flow new solder on here. These pins, and I'm gonna add that wire in, and then I'll put it all back in. I'll show you what we ended up with. But we're gonna talk about these little clips here in a minute. Okay, folks. So I checked the voltages before I put it back in. So the way that you do that is you put the bottom connector on, but you leave these 2 off, and then the voltages are actually labeled on the power supply. So I checked that, everything was cool. I had to adjust the 2 potentiometers there, but everything's cool. So I wanted to talk about the grounds. So here's the deal with the grounds. So I have added that wire, and then I attached it to this screw over here. So the idea is, a lot of the pinball machines over the years, they had all of the boards attached to a ground behind the machine. See that metal plate? But for whatever reason, Gottlieb didn't do that. They had all kinds of little minor design problems, right? Now, personally, I'm just going to be completely honest, right? I have never, ever fixed one of these with the ground mods. The ground mods are important. I'm not saying don't do them, but I have never fixed one. So it's not going to fix anything. It might fix intermittent problems that you have. And there's a lot of people that know a lot more about it than me that insist on the ground mods, right? And it's to the point where you have to do them, because if anybody buys one of these, they actually want to know if you've done the ground mods. So you do need to do it. It does, serve a purpose. But if you think it's going to fix your machine, that ain't going to happen. But the problem was that since the way they designed it was, the ground comes in this connector and then goes out this connector up to the CPU, and then out this connector to the driver board, and then out the driver board. And so you had resistance there. So you might end up where the driver board And the power supply, the ground level was different because there was 4 or 5, half of a volt of resistance in the wire and the wiring and the connectors and all of that. So whenever that happens, it starts making things lock on and things like that. So the way that you get by that is you make it more like other companies in the way they did. So for instance, Williams, they had bars in the back like this, and the boards were attached to the bars with screws, and the boards were designed where the grounds went around the edge and were connected through the screw to the same metal plate in the background, and so everything was connected together, so everything had the same relative ground for all of the logic signals. But if you look on these Gottliebs, they have little plastic spacers that the boards mount on, which is cool, but it means that they all have to get their ground through the wiring harness. Another thing I've seen Todd Tuckey talk about is that you can double up the ground on the little interconnector there. So we'll look at that here in a minute, just to we'll look that up and make sure that we get that just right. But we've got the power supply in and everything's cool. So I wanted to talk about, we are going to do the ground mods, but don't think they're going to fix everything that's wrong with your machine. So the next thing we're going to do is move up to here. But the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to get a piece of paper and I'm going to write down all of these numbers on these little tags, and then we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, so I wrote down all of the numbers of the little tags, and there's one on every board in it. So the earliest one is the one of the displays is a 57192, and then the soundboard is 206, 233, 246, 258, 268, 270, 271, 272. And so there's about 80 numbers difference between the lowest one and the highest one. So our local distributor was Brady Distributing. And so what they did was, if you brought in a game to have it worked on, they would put that little tag on it so that it proved that it was in there. And that you can't take that thing off without breaking it or cutting it. So that was how they could tell if that was how they gave you your warranty. So if you brought it back and said, hey, this thing's broke, and it had that little tag on it, they could look up the number and say, okay, yeah, we worked on that on this date, and here's the repair notes, blah, 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 right? So I was just looking at that because I wanted to see if they were all pretty similar in number, and they're 80 numbers apart. Brady was a huge distributor. I mean, they were probably getting 20 or 30 broken games a day to work on. So in my opinion, all of these tags are probably put on here the exact same time because there's only 80 difference. Also, these wouldn't have been they would have probably came in a box, so you put your hand down in the box and you just grab some of them. And if there's 100 in the box, the numbers might be 80 different, right? A few of them line up where they're sequential, but anyway, so they were mentioning on the other, Ken was mentioning, and a couple people were mentioning on the other video that we did about the Miss Pac-Man cocktail that it had some of those tags on it. So my theory is that if they were the ones that sold the game, they may have put those on there too when it was new, so that for the same reason. So why do they need those tags? Because people lie. That's why they need those tags. I'll give you a good example. So earlier, we have a video game store. So I had a guy come in earlier with a couple games that he bought a week ago, right? So he bought 2 old Xbox games, and he comes in. This guy's already been in about 3 times doing this, right? Man, the game was working fine, and then I got to level 4, and it wouldn't let me go any farther, or blah, 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 right? And so he says both of the games are broke. Okay, well, you know what? I just happen to have those same exact 2 games, other copies of them, that I could just give you. Oh, well, I think I'd rather just get my money back. Okay. Well, we don't do that. Well, could I pick different games? The guy he's lying. The game wasn't broke. He just brought it back, and he wants to swap it out for another one. And so that's in 2020. Lowlifes are doing that. So here's what people are doing in 1980. Their display gets fixed, and they take it back to the shop. They put it in the machine, and then they take another broke display, and they take it back to Brady and say, man, this display you fixed last week is broke again. Well, And so to keep track of all that, they had to put these little locks on that you couldn't take off without breaking. So that's the purpose of those things. We've had people ask us what those were for. It just means that Brady worked on it at some point, and it could be that when the game was new, they did the same thing. Because if you think about it, let's say you bought this game new from Brady. You could do the same thing. You could take that display there and take it off and put one from your other machine on it and say, damn, this new game that I bought from you that's still under warranty, that one of the displays stopped working. And how would they know? They couldn't prove it, right? So I think on all of their brand new games, they put those little things on the boards if it came from Brady. And they could be I'm sure other distributors did the same thing. So the Miss Pac-Man we were talking about, because we were saying that it looked like the thing was home use only because the meter was before 0 even. So it hadn't had hardly any quarters through it. But it had those tags, so we were thinking, it's at least been repaired at some point. It could be that it was never even repaired. That it could be that the distributor put them on there when they were new, just so they would have a date for the warranty if they brought the part back. Now, with that said, that is not what happened on this one. There's no way, and there's a reason why. Remember, I was showing you the 3 boards inside are serial number 09887. So that matches these 3 displays. But when you get to this display, it has been swapped out. Now, it was swapped out either before they sent it to Brady or by Brady, because these numbers line up, So the operator could have swapped them themselves before they took it to Brady. But whenever you've got, this one's 272, this one's 270, this one's 268. Obviously, those are all put on there at the same time. And this one has the wrong serial number too. So this was also swapped off another machine. So they had a couple displays that were acting up. The operator swapped a couple of the displays, or Brady did whenever they were working on it. We already knew, though, that this thing, of course, this has been serviced. I mean, it's an old game. Almost all of them have been. But, I'm just trying to, it's kind of neat looking at stuff like this and seeing if you can figure anything out, So what can we figure out? We can figure out that before it went to Brady to be repaired, whenever the last time was that it was repaired, somebody swapped these 2 displays, or Brady did. And then also, we can tell just by looking at that battery that that's not the original battery. The original one was one of those black data century ones. So at some point that was done too. So whenever they put that battery in was probably when Brady put these little tags on. And I don't think they have like any kind of date encoded in that number. I think that's just whatever number they were up to. They probably literally had done 57,268 repairs by that time. They were huge. Okay, so we've got it all working with the power supply rebuilt. So now we're up to the MPU. So we're going to mess with that battery. Okay, so I have pulled out the mighty Gottlieb System 1 PCB, MPU, whatever. This one is still working. So we're going to leave it. But the horror of battery damage has begun. See how it's running down this damn trace here? But there is nothing on the actual board. It's running along the trace. This thing, I've seen games where it'll be like that, and then that trace connects to a pin that's clean, and then on the other end of the wire, I've seen it on a Bally, on the other end of the wire where it comes out of the wire, it's corroded. That stuff, I don't even know how that would be possible. Like the whole wire wasn't corroded. It was just like here, this was all clean, and then all the way at the other end it was corroded. So whatever. But they have replaced this at some point. There may be a date or something on it to help us figure out part of the mystery. But we're going to pull this off, and I'm going to put a cell battery holder on it. I think that'll be nice. A lot of times we put like the long wires and put AA batteries down in the thing, but on this one I think it would be real clean to put a little button battery holder. But first we got to clean it up. So there's nothing wrong with this one, so there's really not that much to do except get rid of that and clean it up. We're going to add the ground wire, which goes right here, so that we can do the ground mod. Sometimes on these, if you get a problem where they won't reset, you have to replace these 2 capacitors here, but this one's working fine, so I'm not going to mess with it. And since it has the diodes on the driver board, the spider chip is still working, so that's all cool. They had this little prom up here that was different depending on the game, but some of the games used the same prom. Pretty wild, pretty wild. And then, so I was talking about this earlier, the connector. I was talking about how Todd Tuckey has a little tip that he does. I forgot, it's not on the System 1, it's on the System 80. So his tip does not apply to this, but on the System 80 he adds an extra wire or two, and it helps the ground. But on this one you can't do that. All right, so I'm going to unsolder this, and then we'll see if there's a date on that battery to help us figure out when they last worked on it. All right, I think we have solved some of the mystery. It's on the back of the board. Some of the fingers have been touched up. So that was worked on at whatever time, likely that they changed the battery. Now, whenever they changed the battery, is probably when Brady worked on it. Remember, they put the little tag on every board at that time. And the battery says, TDI, the helpful people, 2320 Wisconsin Avenue, Downers Grove, Illinois, and there's their phone number. You can give them a call, people, see if they're still helpful. But it has a date on it. September of 86 is when the battery was made. So, so they must have swapped that in back in the 80s. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit. It's not bad, and like I said, it was still working. So we're just getting all of the visible damage off. This is actually hot glue here. We're getting all the visible damage off. We want all these traces cleaned up. So we'll get on that. Here's what we ended up with. So scrubbed all the stuff off I could get. Got it down as clean as I could. Rubbed some vinegar on it. Washed the vinegar off. Rubbed some alcohol on it to evaporate any of the water that I couldn't see. All looks pretty good. The little button battery. There's 100 ways to do this, folks. If you don't like the way I did it, don't do it that way on yours, for sure. But the little button battery, there was actually 2 holes that it fit right in. So the negative, there's 2 holes. So I put one there. And then it would just fit in a little hole that was here that I guess the original data center used or something. I don't know. But it was able to fit over to there. And then from there, that hole isn't connected to anything. You might be able to fit it to this one too. I don't know if that one's connected to anything. Yeah, that one's connected. Well, no. Yeah. So you might be able to fit it to this one. But I went from here to here. And then where your positive lead is on the battery, you put a little 1N 4001 through 4007 little diode here, and you put it with the band going towards the board. This is the positive on the board. This is the negative. You put it with the band going towards the board so that it can't, when it's turned on, it can't charge the battery. These old ones that actually charged. But you do not want it to do that. So, put a little 3 volt button battery in it, and that should work pretty good and shouldn't leak all over it. So now I'm going to have people in the comments tell me don't use vinegar. Okay, I won't. Don't use water. Okay, I won't. I didn't clean it up good enough. Okay, I'll do better next time. That's the wrong size diode. Gotcha. Won't use that one next time. And that the battery doesn't have enough voltage. Understood. Won't use that battery next time. But while they're all saying that, I'm going to go put it in the game and get it to work. Okay, we're back up. Now you'll notice that there's garbage in the displays whenever it does the high score. That's because we replaced the battery, so it forgot its settings. I forgot to mention that I did the ground mod, so you put it in the middle of those 2 capacitors, which is where the ground enters the board. See the black wires coming in the connector? If you look on the back, they connect right there, so you put your little ground wire. Bam, get it over to the back box. We still got to do the driver board, but all of the little teeth looked fine on the pins on there. Some of them have been replaced, actually. But it could have been way back in 1986 or 87, whenever they would have done that. Oh, I forgot to say, we didn't put any coating on the traces. So if you're somebody who cares about that, definitely do that on yours. So I need to go into settings and reset all of the our little numbers. I don't know if you can reset them or if you just had to play a game. We'll try to just reset them. Okay, so when you go in the test, as you go through each number to reset it, there's a button on the board that you can press that resets it back to 0. So some of the numbers will be crazy stuff, like 7 blank. Or SS blank 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 blank. So we're just going to reset everything. All right, folks, we have pulled out the driver board. These usually don't need all that much work. I was mentioning before about these little diodes. They also have some down on the bottom. I guess there are 7 total. These 3 and these 4. If you've got one of the older boards that won't have that, you can add them if you like, or they actually make one of those interconnector things that we were just talking about that have the diodes built into it, so you can get that too. But if you don't use that in one of these shorts, it will fry your spider chip sometimes. So what I usually do is I check, while I've got it out, I check the transistors just to see if any of them aren't working. But usually if you've got something like that bad, you'll know from the playfield. But the way you can do it is you can just use your diode check and check between the legs. Usually from the inside to the outside will work, but you just want to check to see if you get the same, what do they call it? Voltage drop between like ones. So, you know, these are the same. See if they are all similar. If you get one that's out of whack, it's probably bad. And then all these are little lights. You can check all those too if you would like. And then we're going to add a ground wire right here. So we're going to add a ground to come over to connect to the back box to do our final ground mod in the back box. People have said that you should do it on the soundboard too, but I'm not too worried about that one. We definitely want to do these so that coils don't lock on and things, but I guess sounds could lock on too. So, but we'll try that and see what we can do. Everything tested fine except this tag from Brady had broke one of the legs off. So the leg was still in there, but it was not touching. So I had to take off one of our precious tags. Oh well. But I think we're back in business. So we've got everything mounted back in. Got all of our little ground mods done. That's all gravy, baby. And then we cleaned the displays, replaced the light bulbs. Nice new light bulbs. Yes, you can do LEDs if you would like to on your machine. We have clear coated the back of the solar ride. It's kind of hard to tell, but see the shine there? That's because we have triple thick on it. So hopefully it will never, ever, ever, you can kind of see how we've hit it. Hopefully it will never, ever, ever get any worse. Right? We have put the pop bumper caps on. We had a problem where this wire was getting stuck. I got that straightened out. Look at this. We have changed the flippers to the, well, these two were all right, but we changed the flipper to the correct one. That was a big whole scenario, people. That took forever. So we cheated whenever we cleaned off the displays. I had to put glue on that second player when that was too light, you know. And when I did, I swapped it down to the fourth player one. But it is almost as bright as the other ones now. I know you can zap them, but I've been wanting to see if you just leave them on, if it fixes them. And I think it does. But that's only on those Futaba displays. Futaba. That sounds Japanese for all of you weebos out there. All right, so we've got it looking pretty good. And got our ground done. So what we need to do is film another video and do all of the stuff that's left. So that will be part 2, but we're almost there. We also cleaned off the legs. Got them looking a little better. Look at that. Look at the nice shine there on the legs. But we still have plenty to do. We haven't done anything underneath the play field. We haven't tested it out yet. And there will likely be some things going on. Like I haven't seen any of these drop targets reset yet or anything like that. So join us next time on the next video. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. You can tell us if you'd like how you usually do the ground mods, because I know I didn't do them right. So you can leave your comments below about how the right way to do it is. But that's the way we do it. And let us know if you ever played Solar Ride back in the day. Hope you enjoyed the video of us working on it. Make sure to give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. And check out our website, lionsarcade.com. You can also come see us. We're in downtown Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is about 15 miles south of Charlotte, North Carolina. We are over the border. Look at that. What a great pop number gap. We are over the border in South Carolina. We have a link below where we're trying to show you something on Amazon. If you follow that link, once you get to Amazon, anything you buy on Amazon, not just the thing we link, but anything, pays us a little royalty for sending you there. So that's really cool. People have been doing that a lot lately, and that's pretty neat. It doesn't cost you anything, doesn't raise your prices, but just by clicking that link, you're telling Amazon, hey, I came here because Joe's Video Games sent me here. And they say, okay, we'll tip Joe's Video Games. So they give us a percentage of whatever you buy. That's very cool. So leave your comments below. Go to Amazon and buy a bunch of stuff, or a little bit of stuff, whatever you can afford. You know you're going to buy it anyway. I mean, everybody needs ramen noodles right now, right? We're all in this lockdown thing that they've got going on. So go check that out. Make sure to leave us your comments below. And we make sure to tune in for next time. We will see you on the next video whenever we fix this thing a little more, get it ready to go, and test play it a little bit. See you then.